If Lelouch times C2 is your favorite ship in Code Geass, then chances are one of the reasons why this is the case is because they constantly flirt and tease each other.
I don't like cold pizza.
Right now I have a school festival and a coup d'etat to run.
Now these scenes are of course wholesome and funny, but they also give us helpful insights to the nature of their relationship and how it evolves, which is why I want to share my thoughts of these two through analyzing each of these scenes. Because just like you, this is my favorite ship in the series. Here are timestamps of the 4 scenes that I'll be analyzing in today's video. Let's begin.
You believe you can destroy it simply by using that power?
I intended to do it without this power.
I just knew that he'd turn out to be a fascinating guy. I can make do here.
What? You expect to stay here?
A gentleman would sleep on the floor.
There is a lot to break down here, starting with Lelouch's actions. But first, let's recap what's happened so far. Lelouch and Rivals head back to school after he beats a noble in chess in under 9 minutes, which apparently was...
It's impossible, right?
On the way back to school, they caused Colin and Nagato to crash by driving in front of their truck. Was this their fault?
I don't think so.
Anyways, seeing as how everyone preferred to watch the wreckage or the aftermath instead of helping, Lelouch heads over to the truck. It's impressive that the show came out in 2006, and yet it's good to see nothing has changed when it comes to people staring at their phones instead of actually doing something meaningful. When Lelouch gets close enough to the truck, C2 telepathically communicates with him, stating that she finally found the one. Lelouch is a bit confused what happened, but still climbs the truck anyways. At the same time, Nagato regains consciousness and starts driving it again. Lelouch then falls into the truck as it heads into the sewers. I always liked that roll he did. If it were me, it would have been something like this. Colin at the same time heads out to find the Glasgow, and Lelouch recognized her before she went out. Nagato crashes into the sewers after hitting a bump in the road. The truck is spotted by Suzaku, who was sent with other Japanese, honorary Britannian, 11s? Whatever. Suzaku didn't recognize Lelouch, and thus the meme was born. But eventually, he does realize it is Lelouch when he comes closer to him, and the two reunited. At the same time though, C2 emerged from the pod, and kudos to Zaku for giving up the breathing mask to save Lelouch in case it actually was poisonous gas. While the boys help C2 out of her straitjacket, the royal guards show up. The leader congratulates Zaku for finding C2, but then proceeds to shoot him after he refused to kill Lelouch. This guy did call the Japanese people monkeys, so this shouldn't surprise anyone. Before the royal guards leader had a chance to kill Lelouch, Nagato blows up the truck, helping C2 and Lelouch to get away. Lelouch and C2 eventually get to the other side of the warehouse. Unfortunately though, the leader does catch them because of the worst time phone call in history. The guard then attempts to kill Lelouch like he was trying to do before, but C2 intercepts the bullet. She then telepathically communicates with Lelouch while in an unconscious state. Lelouch agrees to her contract and receives a Geass power. He then uses his new Geass power to kill the royal guards and leaves C2 for dead. So imagine his surprise when he discovers C2 alive in his dorm room. Although given the whole telepathy thing, he shouldn't be too surprised that happened. C2 confuses Nunnally about the nature of their commitment, and Lelouch has to clarify that.
Kidding before. Kidding. Just a dumb joke, that's all.
He has to break a dish to end the conversation to trick Nunnally that C2 is wet and she needs a change of clothes. He is then able to get her to go into his bedroom. While there, Lelouch is naturally confused about everything, and C2 pivots to asking about the Geass power, his, then actually answering his questions. And now we've gone to the part of the episode where I played the clip. C2 would rather stay with Lelouch to avoid the military than fend for herself outside. A decision Lelouch isn't pleased with. When C2 decides to go to bed, Lelouch again tries to ask her questions about Geass and what happened, and she of course brushes off his questions. The next clip I showed is from stage 7, where Lelouch wakes up after having one of the worst nightmares of his life, which recapped how he got exiled to Japan to begin with. You see him sleeping in his bed with C2, which means that despite what C2 said in that previous clip, they do eventually share a bed. C2's line,
I just knew that he'd turn out to be a fascinating guy,
was actually good foreshadowing. So far, we don't understand exactly how C2 seems so familiar with Lelouch. Our only hints are a scene of C2 watching Lelouch as a child and when she telepathically communicated with him. C2 must believe that anyone who fulfills her contract must be an interesting person, but we know there's more going on here. In R2, we learned that C2 worked with Charles and Marion to help with the Ragnarok connection and was in charge of the Geass Order. So I am guessing that another reason why she figured Lelouch would be an interesting guy is because both his parents are. C2 commenting on Lelouch finally being the one to fulfill her contract could be a knock against his mother, who didn't fulfill her contract, something C2 is still not pleased about years later.
At least as far as giving me my Geass power.
And you never fulfilled your contract.
And this is why it's rewarding to rewatch the show, because scenes like this take on new meaning once you know everything. As the conversation continued, C2 seemed amused and a tad bit curious when Lelouch discussed destroying Britannia with or without Geass. The reason why I say amused is because given her knowledge that Charles has a Geass power and she's helping him with the Ragnarok connection, she knows he does not stand a chance in stopping Charles, but is playing along with this because ultimately she needs him to fulfill her contract. In a sense, she is teasing him early on, and Lelouch doesn't even realize it. You probably noticed this, but C2 is actually quite selfish, and the next part of this scene is the first of many times C2 acts that way. She complicates Lelouch's life by becoming his new roommate, and she does this for many reasons. The obvious is because she doesn't want the military to go after her, but I also think it's to keep Lelouch alive since she needs him to fulfill her contract. Eventually, this actually turned out to be a good thing for Lelouch because C2 will act as a body double, she shares useful insights, and uses her powers to save him on more than one occasion. The only time where it did become a major issue was during many of these school slice-of-life events, which were mostly inconsequential to the main story. C2's comments on a gentleman would sleep on the floor is probably another way of playfully teasing with Lelouch. She could also be secretly insulting his dad as a prince, as they probably have etiquette that must be followed as a member of the royal family. Maybe this is just an observation that she has observed over her life, which is over 700 years old, or 500, however you want to put it. More than likely though, I'm just overanalyzing stuff. Now at the beginning of stage 7, we see Lelouch and C2 sharing a bed. I'm thinking one of two things must have happened. One, C2 might have felt bad for making him sleep on the floor, and since they became closer, she allowed him to sleep on the bed. Or two, she needed him fully rested to fulfill her contract, so she was willing to make the sacrifice to share a bed with him. Either way, it's one of those things you might have missed on your first viewing since it happens really fast, and it's the only time we ever see these two share a bed together. Overall, this scene did a great job in foreshadowing events to come and setting the stage for how C2 and Lelouch will interact with each other in subsequent episodes.
Why did you rescue me?
I told you already. I can't have you dying.
I wouldn't have lost if the conditions were equal.
You sore loser. If you're really that good, you should be able to set up conditions the way you want.
You're probably wondering why C2 taunts Lelouch in a sewer. Well, here's what happened. Cornelia takes over for Clovis after Lelouch kills him in stage 6. To avenge Clovis' death, she comes up with a plan to trap Zero. The news announced a military operation in the Saitama Ghetto, an operation that's oddly similar to what happened at Shinjuku. Cornelia does this because she anticipates that having similar conditions would get Zero's attention. This is exactly what happens. Lelouch later on arrives in his dorm room, understandably upset. After explaining to C2 the situation, she points out that this is obviously a setup to draw him out. This leads to a debate on the validity of Britannian philosophy. C2 explains that the law of survival of the fittest is what makes Britannia strong. Lelouch argued that a world like that would leave nothing to die, so he can't support it. Lelouch's willingness to still go and fight Cornelia really angers C2, and thus she threatens him by gunpoint to stay put. To this day, I'm not sure why C2 chose to use a gun over something like a rope. When other students hear gunshots, it seems like there are better ways to achieve the same outcome. I also wonder how Lelouch could fulfill her contract if he wasn't able to continue his campaign. And if you really think about it, given what we learned in Turn 21, and then there's that other part, and then if you really... Anyways, Lelouch, in response to C2 threatening to kill him, threatens to kill himself, with the logic being that going back to his old life is the same as not living at all. And as Lelouch brilliantly said,
"Ah, but who is stupider, the one trying to kill himself or the person trying to kill the person trying to kill himself?" That's what I thought.
C2 does give in because she understands that this is the purpose in his life. It might also have something to do with needing him alive to fulfill her contract. Lelouch's plan at the Saitama Ghetto starts off promising, only for it to take a turn for the worse. Cornelia tricks Lelouch by playing along with his plans, only to spring her trap into action. Her royal guards wipe out his forces as Zero himself joins the other Sarlans as they were called back. Cornelia then instructs each pilot to open their hatch. Before Lelouch opens his hatch, which would have led to his downfall, C2 appears as Zero to distract the Britannian troops, allowing him to escape. The two then arrive at the sewers, where C2 explains why she saved him, and that a true master strategist can set up the game any way they like. Lelouch then realizes that he must create his own military force to fight Britannia. Now let's talk about the interaction itself. Lelouch went off to face Cornelia, despite C2 telling him it was a trap, and I assumed C2 figured this out through a combination of common sense and years of experience. But C2 taunts him not only because she was right, but that she had to save him. C2 saving his life in combination with losing to Cornelia damaged Lelouch's ego. That's why I think he was defensive when C2 taunted him. Lelouch almost acts like a child here in treating real war as a game with fair rules. This is something he learned was 100% wrong and will keep this in mind for future plans. This loss to Cornelia was an important step for Lelouch in his journey to fight against Britannia. At this point in the story, C2 doesn't have any romantic feelings towards Lelouch. Heck, she doesn't even see him as a friend. He's merely just an accomplice to help her fulfill her contract. Despite that, I like how she's helping him further his goals, even though it doesn't directly benefit her. It's due to C2's advice that Lelouch decides to form the Black Knights, and as they say, the rest is history. As the story progresses, C2 will continue to help Lelouch in a similar fashion, but pay attention to her tone and attitude during those future scenes. You will notice a shift from condescending annoyance to genuine caring. It's fun to look back at this scene and compare it to how C2 interacts with Lelouch at the end of the series.
Yeah, well, everybody loves a hero. And what better hero than a knight?
I kind of doubt that's what a real knight for justice would say.
You don't think so?
The Black Knights instantly become popular among the Japanese people following the hostage rescue. Their popularity would only increase after dealing with their refrain dealers, an act that cemented the Black Knights as Knights of Justice. As a result, the Japanese and even non-Japanese like Detard started to send Lelouch applications to join up. While Lelouch reviews the applications, C2 swims in the Ashford pool. The two discuss why so many people have sent applications. Lelouch explains it's because they condemn terrorism. This short but fun banter between Lelouch and C2 is quite interesting. Lelouch calls the Black Knights the Knights of Justice because it sounds appealing. As he said,
And what better hero than a knight?
C2 counters by stating that actual Knights of Justice wouldn't say that, which is true since Lelouch implies that choosing to be called the Black Knights was more of a marketing strategy than a reflection of what the Black Knights are. Now, C2 is over 500 years old and has seen many heroes in her day. From her point of view, actual heroes didn't choose that path because it's a good PR move, or for the glory, or as a way to gain followers. Another fun thing about this scene is that Lelouch smiles towards C2 after she calls him out on his BS. Lelouch is starting to learn to play along with C2's remarks instead of taking it personally or reacting incorrectly, which is why I like the interaction so much. And C2 seems to enjoy it as well. Most of the fun interactions between the two are moments just like this. The two will constantly fling insults, which eventually come across as flirting. This is probably one of the first times in the entire series where the two have a fun discussion like this. Side note, having C2 swimming in this scene is probably important to foreshadow how she'll be able to rejoin the Black Knights after her fight against Jeremiah. The film further proves this by showing her swimming in the water after the events of R1.
How was that?
It was bad. It was completely bad. It wasn't tender. There was no honesty or sympathy in it. You spoke it oddly, and worst of all, it was cold.
You're a picky girl.
Exactly. That's why I go by the name C2.
During the Battle of Narita, Lelouch was moments away from victory. With an unexpected assistance from the Four Holy Swords and Cornelia trapped, this was checkmate. Unfortunately for Lelouch, the White Knight Zaku in the landslide ruined his plans for the second time. Lelouch orders a retreat, but that doesn't stop Zaku from chasing him. Given the obvious difference in Nightmare Frame performance and Nightmare Frame pilot skills, Zaku easily defeats the Borai, forcing Lelouch to escape on foot. Lelouch stands face to face with the Lancelot and his plans falling apart right before him, but before Zaku can move in to capture him, C2 appears. She makes physical contact with Zaku through touching the Lancelot. Her only goal here is to keep Zaku busy so Lelouch can get away. Lelouch observes her action from afar. Because he's annoyed with C2 constantly saving him, Lelouch approaches C2 and touches her. Unexpectedly, C2 then sends images of her past into Lelouch's mind. Eventually this allows Zaku to break free from C2's grasp and goes on a rampage, having his mind destroyed by the images fed to him. C2 protects Lelouch from all the debris caused by the Varus cannon. Eventually, one of the debris flies at high speeds, piercing C2's chest. Lelouch is able to escape with C2 and flee to a nearby cave. While inside, he tends to her wounds and hears C2 whisper her name while she sleeps. After C2 wakes up, she scolds him for saving her. Since she's immortal, Lelouch didn't have to protect her, and that's why she was frustrated. Lelouch responds by telling C2 he learned something, and then he utters her name. He then does something after that, which no one else has done according to C2, which is thank her for her help. In disbelief, she then asks him to repeat her name once more, but is immediately dissatisfied with the way he does it. She then complains it wasn't done with any heart or emotion. Lelouch in response calls her a picky girl. This is the first time Lelouch playfully teases C2 in the story, and it's great that she's going along with it. One of the running gags in this show is Lelouch calling C2 a selfish creature, a picky girl, a witch, etc. We can thank this scene for starting it. C2 expressing her dissatisfaction for Lelouch doing something for her will also become a running gag in this series. To this day, I'm not sure where C2 even gets this attitude from. Perhaps from her time when everyone loved her due to her Geass, or perhaps it came from her time as an immortal. It's just interesting that C2 went from the mindset of a slave to someone of royalty. After this interaction, it appeared that C2 and Lelouch became friends, but something odd happens in stage 13. Instead of comforting Lelouch following the funeral of Shirley's father, the same man he killed, she antagonizes him. Don't get it twisted, she told Lelouch the cold hard facts about the consequences of his actions. The timing was just inappropriate. C2 in that moment made sure to prioritize her own needs over Lelouch's, which is something he didn't do while in the cave. But eventually we will see the opposite occur as the series progresses. That's my analysis on the first 4 scenes where Lelouch and C2 flirt and tease each other. Let me know in the comment section below which scene was your favorite and why. If you want more scene analysis like this, then watch this video here where I break down C2 and Lelouch's first meeting with each other.